Hi guys, I'm Carly from All the Pretty Books. For those who are returning to the channel, welcome back. And for those who are new, I'm Carly. Like I said, I've been collecting Harry Potter books since roughly 2009. I started collecting rare and signed things at that time, and then about 2014 I started collecting translations. This is some of the translations behind me. I have some over here, some off camera, some over to the right off camera, and then I have a cabinet in another room that has my rare and signed books as well as my harder to find translations. So I have quite a lot of books and I really enjoy them. And my collection is continuing to grow, so that's really fun. And speaking of fun collections, I thought it would be fun to have a series where I would have other Potter collectors on and they can show their collection, discuss their collection, tell the why they started collecting Harry Potter if they want to, and just kind of chit chat. Part of the fun of collecting is meeting people, one, but also getting to talk about the fun stories behind your collection. So I thought it'd be fun. If you are interested in being on in the interview, you are welcome to reach out. I'll put my contact details down below. But you can also just reach me through my website, alltheprettybooks.net, my email, alltheprettybooks1@gmail.com, and through Instagram as well, alltheprettybooks. So again, I'll put all that information down below. But I thought it would be fun, and it doesn't just have to be book collectors. It could be wand collectors, art collectors, memorabilia collectors, screen-used movie prop collectors, which is how I got into collecting Harry Potter in the first place. And I'll go into that a little bit later. But I thought it'd be fun. So anyway, reach out if you're interested. I think it could be neat. To start off, I guess, the interview series, I thought it would be fun to answer some of the questions all in one space that I've been asked the most over the years, really. Some of them I've answered on this channel, some I've answered on the podcast I co-host Dialogue Alley, and some I've answered in personal emails, DMs, and whatnot, but I've never really sat down and answered them all in one space, so that's what I'm doing today. I think the number one question I've been asked is what got me into collecting Harry Potter books, and that is quite a story. I have always been a collector of things. When I was a little girl, I started collecting Breyer horses, and then I started collecting Madame Alexander dolls, the big pretty Madame Alexander dolls, mainly because I loved their dresses. Still do. I love big poofy dresses and beautiful hairstyles and all of that stuff. So I collected Madame Alexander dolls primarily for that reason. And then I grew out of that, but I was still collecting different things, just really, I don't know, kind of aimlessly for a little bit. And then I went to grad school for the first time, and I was in a history of the book club, and we were making paper and binding books and learning about the history of the book itself, which is really fascinating. And I had some friends in there that were collecting books. They were collecting different editions from different authors they liked. And so I thought I should do the same. So I started collecting editions of Alfred Lord Tennyson's Lady of Shalott. Not Harry Potter yet. And it was okay. I really actually love The Lady of Shalott. One of my tattoos is one of my favorite lines from that poem, in fact. But I really still love the poem. I just didn't enjoy the collecting of the books as much as I thought I would. So then I decided I wanted to collect something that meant more to me personally. And I was on eBay one day and I saw a whole bunch of Harry Potter books for a range of prices. And I was like, why don't I collect Harry Potter something or other? So I still wasn't going to collect books. I wasn't there yet, despite seeing those books there on eBay. I connected first with Harry Potter through the movies. So weirdly enough, I found somebody who had worked on some of the movie 1 and movie 2, and I can't remember if he worked on movie 3, but he had some neat screen used movie props that had the letters of authentication and provenance and all the things that it should have. You could see where they were in the movies. And so I started collecting those. I did that for about 6 months, and at different points I had really neat things. Some of them I still have, and I'll probably do a video on them one day. And some of them I sold off so I could go into more book buying. But it was really, really fun, and I sideways met Peter through it because I wanted to have something signed by the author, and that was much harder to do with screen use things, and movie things for that matter. So I was like, well, I need a signed book. Well, I somehow got into signed movie manuscripts, or movie script rather. And there's a lot of forgeries in there. And turns out the 2 scripts that I bought were forged. Very bad ones now that I know. And this was roughly 2008, somewhere in there. So I returned them, got my money back, but the person that I met at the time said, hey, you should really talk to this guy named Peter. He's great with Harry Potter signed things, J.K. Rowling signature. If you're going to buy signed books, you need to talk to him. And I was like, okay. So I reached out to him, and we're still friends to this day. So Peter the Potter Collector and I met through eBay, and we were really good friends. We became really good friends, chatting through eBay messages at first. So that was really fun. And my very first signed book actually came through Peter. It was a Philosopher's Stone. I forget the print now. It was a softcover Philosopher's Stone dedicated to Haley. And that was the first signed book that was authentic or authorized or legitimate or whatever word you want to go with that I owned. And it came through Peter. And we've been pretty good friends ever since. So that's kind of fun. As far as why Harry Potter and why it meant something to me, I think we all have our own little stories about why the books resonate with us. And I know I certainly do. I did not really like Harry Potter things because my sister did, and I didn't want to like anything that she did. So I was sick at home one day, and she put the movie in because all that was out was the first movie, and they hadn't even started movie 2, or if they had, I didn't know about it. But it was the first 4 books that were out, so roughly 2000, it was after the movie, so 2001, 2002, somewhere in there. Anyway, I was sick at home. Sister put on the movie, and I really enjoyed it. A lot more than I wanted to. And she had the first 4 books because that's all that were out. And I read them all in a span of days. And I really enjoyed the story. So from then on, I was, part of the pre-ordering the books and waiting for them to show up in the mailbox and all that fun that went with that. And waiting for the series to finish and all of the fan theories that went around, how will the series end? And that was such a fun time. That was such a fun time. But that was probably 9 years, like I said, before I got into collecting anything to do with Harry Potter, 8 years somewhere in there. And in between 2008, when I got into collecting the screen used movie props, and whenever I first saw the movie of Harry Potter, my dad was killed in a car accident. It was really, really bad. And actually, it'll be 20 years come Sunday, April 6th. I can't believe it's been that long. But most of my friends hadn't had that kind of a loss. And I don't know, I found a different kind of friend in Harry, and I could resonate with him in a whole different way. I don't know, I reread and read and reread all of the Harry Potter books that I could as they came out, and the series as it was at the time just doesn't escape. So it really became Harry and, Hermione and Ron, McGonagall, Albus, all those guys became a lot more than just book characters in a way. They really were very special to me at a time when I really needed special things, I guess. So that's, I guess, what kind of urged me into collecting Harry Potter things in 2008 when I decided I really wanted to collect things again. And have an organized collection, if that makes sense. Not just, I want to collect a little bit of China and a little bit of this, but I actually wanted to have an organized, I'm going to collect X and stick with it. And it's just that collector brain. I was raised by a lot of, my mom collected cookie jars, dad collected cookie jars with mom, and then my grandparents were antique dealers, and they went all over the country doing antique shows. Some of my first little girl memories were of being in antique stores and watching Grandy haggle. So it's just how I grew up. I didn't realize up until maybe in my late 20s that not everybody collected things. It wasn't something that everybody did. I just thought you did. I thought you picked what you were going to collect and everybody just had their own thing. And turns out that's not always the case. But that's kind of a long story about how I came to collecting Harry Potter books. I hope that made sense. I know it was kind of all over the place, but you know, it's been fun. It's been really fun, actually. How did you go from collecting rare and signed Harry Potter books to translations? I've had quite a lot of people ask that since I started collecting translations about 11 years ago now. And for starters, and a very simple answer is I love all the different art on the book covers from around the world. There's certain art that is only available on certain books from certain countries. Like for example, I may not have been exposed to the lovely Bosnian cover art if I hadn't have collected Harry Potter translations. I may not have known about it as much of a thing. And I really do. I love this art. I think the illustrator is fantastic. But beyond that, I also love language. I have always loved language since I was a very little girl, like 2-3 years old. One of my favorite things to do, according to my mother, is walk up to people who were speaking in different languages and just sit and listen. And I would try to mimic their sounds. And I loved it. And she had a really hard time keeping up with me if there was anybody speaking anything other than English around, or speaking English very differently than what I was exposed to at home. So I've always loved language, the sounds of language, the grammar, not like prescriptive grammar such as grammar rules, but how does language make sense in the head? How does the sentence come together to get meaning and semantics and syntax and all the fun things that fall into language? I'm fascinated by. So translations are something that is just very much within my academic interests as well. And including the translation process, that there's an art to translation. And I really enjoy researching when I find out somebody speaks, I don't know, a certain language. One of the things I ask when I get to know them somewhat well is if they've read the Harry Potter translation in whatever language, and how, and if so, how was it compared to the English books if they'd read those? Because sometimes the differences can be pretty pronounced, I think, depending on the topic. And translation can be done very poorly to where the essence of a story is, simplified too much or sometimes lost pretty terribly. So I'm fascinated by so much of it. However, I was still slow to jump on the translation collection. I really love rare and signed things. They will always have my heart. So it was a hard, you have limited amount of funds. So it was really hard when I really want this really cool signed book over here. But oh wait, there's literally a world of translations all over with wonderful art, really cool languages, and I've met wonderful people along the way. But what eventually kind of drew me in finally was when Peter told me that there was a Breton translation. And Breton is a language that I've studied quite a bit when I was doing my master degree in language, and I didn't know there was one. And I loved that there was. That language is just very close to my heart. I love Breton for so many different reasons, and I enjoyed my research on it. And I was really excited that there was a translation for it. And even better, it has unique cover art. So the only way that I can even own this cover art, which is very odd for a Harry Potter book, is to have the Breton translation. So pretty cool. And that's what kind of got me into the translation collecting, was finding out there was a Breton. And from then on, I never looked back. It's been so much fun. And I've met people from most all over the world, which is even neater. I think one of my favorite memories from early in the days of translation collecting, this was round about late 2014, early 2015, somewhere in there. And I was buying a lot, like maybe 5, 6, maybe 7 translations off of Peter. And he was like, Carly, these translations here are more expensive than the ones you bought last week, which had been like Spanish and French, some of the easier to find ones, and those are still fairly easy to find today. Italian, I think, may have been like $20, something like that. So this batch was more expensive, which it was. It was like $35. I remember he's like, they're like $35 each, so just be prepared. And I was like, okay. And I want to say in that batch I had like Galician book 1, which Galician is a language out of Spain. There are actually, Spain has like, I think 5 translations and 1 adaptation, so really cool. And this was one of them that I got off Peter at that time. And now that book, the Galician book 1, is becoming quite hard to find on its own. The other 6 aren't too bad. And then Kumai book 1 was also, I believe, one of the ones that was purchased for either $35 or maybe $45 at that time. Which is wild because Khmer, which is a Cambodian language, is fairly hard to find now. If you're a translation collector, Khmer is becoming really hard to find, even in Cambodia. So, yeah, I locked into mine very early on. But yeah, I remember Peter was like, Carly, it's gonna be more expensive, and it just makes me chuckle because the prices have definitely gone up now. If I could own any Harry Potter book, what would it be and why? Well, I love rare and signed things. That's what got me into all of this anyway, like I said. So I would have to go with a hardcover, first print, first edition Philosopher's Stone, signed in 1997 by J.K. Rowling. That would just be the ultimate thing for me to get to own. So that would be the book that I would love to get my hands on at some point. Do you collect other things, or are you a part of any other fandoms? I loosely collect Cormoran Strike books, which the Cormoran Strike, CB Strike series is also a series authored by J.K. Rowling. It's just authored under her pen name, Robert Galbraith. So I have some rare and signed books from the Cormoran Strike series as well. I don't spend a lot of time hunting those down. If I get a good deal on one of those books, I'll happily buy it, but I'm not going to go spend a lot of resources or sell books so I could buy one of those signed books. I'd much rather have the Harry Potter stuff because that's just where my interests lie. But yeah, so I would say that's another collection of mine. And I'm also rereading the Cormoran Strike series. I really do enjoy that series. It's not for kids, but it's a very good series all the same. So I say quite a bit that I don't collect Beedle the Bard translations because I don't actively collect them, if that makes sense. I have quite a few, but I'm not going to go out of my way and spend a lot of resources on a Beedle the Bard, if that makes sense. There's a lot more Beedle the Bards actually being translated now and within the last few years, which is really cool. I'm not going to spend a lot of time or resources tracking them down. However, I wound up with quite a few of them because when I was ordering from different publishers, sometimes I would get a better deal on shipping depending on the books that I bought. So I would chunk in a Tales of Beedle the Bard because they could be relatively cheap and help me get to that extra weight to save on the shipping that I needed to make the order make sense. And so I would get Tales of Beedle the Bard. That's kind of how that started. And then I was gifted Tales of Beedle the Bard from friends who went to Indonesia. Do I have it? No, Vietnam. I have the Vietnamese one. So that's how some of mine came to be. Or just sent them because they knew I collected Harry Potter books. They weren't sure if that counted, so they would just send it on with books I'd either ask them to pick up for me when they were in a different country or as a gift. So that's kind of how the Beedle the Bard translation collection started. I really don't claim to collect them, and if you talk to me, I really don't collect them, but I have quite a few of them, and they're really, really fun because, again, there's different cover arts on some of them, and they only exist in some of those countries, and that's really fun because it's unique, right? So yeah. As far as being a part of other fandoms, when I was much younger, I really got into the Anne of Green Gables series by Lucy Maud Montgomery, and I love all of those books. I've read them so many times, and they're just charming and delightful. And I actually found Alfred Lord Tennyson through Anne of Green Gables. So she kind of led to where I am now in a very roundabout way. So I would say I don't know if there's a big Anne of Green Gables fandom like there is for Star Wars or Harry Potter or Disney, but I love Anne Shirley. I love Anne of Green Gables, and it's just such a charming collection of stories. And if you've not read them, I hope you do, because they really are great. Other than Harry Potter, what books do you read? I really don't read fantasy outside of Harry Potter, which I know shocks a lot of people. I really don't like fantasy in general. Harry Potter just happened to catch me at the right point in my life. And before my dad was killed, I had read the series as it was coming out, but I didn't really gravitate to it as an escapism until after he was killed. So that's when the series itself and Harry became much more special to me, I guess. I just remember some of those very early days after I lost Dad that I really needed somebody that I could kind of relate to. And that was Harry Potter at the time. I had really, really good friends and I had a great support system, but I was quite young when this happened, or I felt like I was quite young when that happened. And my friends really hadn't gone through a lot of tragic events, and Harry had. So I think that's why I really gravitated to Harry, and why that kind of is the anomaly, I guess, for the I really don't read fantasy outside of Harry Potter, is that usually what I read is a lot of history, biography, memoir. I will read historical fiction as long as the historical fiction doesn't really alter the historical timeline of things, because I like things to follow historical events if I'm reading historical fiction. So that's honestly what I'm reading. Like I said a little bit ago, I'm rereading the Cormoran Strike series, but I'm also reading a very charming book called Dinosaurs at the Dinner Party, or Dinner Table, Dinosaurs at the Dinner Party. And it's very charming. It's about how the discovery of dinosaur fossils during the Victorian age, and acknowledging that they were dinosaur fossils, even if by different names, kind of shaped the natural sciences that we have now, and how and why. And it's pretty interesting, even if a little bit topographical. It doesn't really go into a lot of the nitty gritty, but it's really fun. And the history behind some of those things is pretty intriguing. And I just have always loved history. I've been really, really, really fortunate to get to travel to a lot of this planet and get to see some really neat things. And I just stand, whenever I'm in the Louvre, which I've had the privilege of going to quite a few times, I just stand there and I'm in awe, because the only thing that is separating me from some of my favorite people in history is just time. And that just gives me chills. So I love history, and I love the historical figures. And I read a lot of biographies about Joan of Arc and Cleopatra, Boudica, Mary Queen of Scots, Marie Antoinette, Louis XIV, lots of Tudor history. I love that too. And Richard, the Lionheart, and, Eleanor of Aquitaine, and just, I love history. So that's kind of where my interests go to, in traveling and all of that. So Harry Potter, oddly enough, and is just kind of an anomaly there. What are some of your favorite pieces? And that is a really hard question for me to answer. I've been really privileged in that I've gotten to own some really neat, rare and signed Harry Potter books, rare translations. So I'm very fortunate there. I keep going back to, as far as some of my favorite pieces, it's favorite for different reasons, but I would have to say the two that I keep going back to are my Jessica books. Although I've got other great ones, but they may be signed to the same Jessica? I don't know, but I have a Philosopher's Stone. It's a 6th print. I'm trying to get it to focus. It's a 6th print soft cover, so it's the first Philosopher's Stone soft cover to have the Sunday Telegraph quote here at the bottom. It replaced the Wendy Cooling quote at the bottom. And it's signed. It has a very early, it's a book plate actually that's been stuck to the back of the cover. And it has an early signature. It says, "To Jessica, I've got one of them at home. Best wishes, J.K. Rowling." And it's got J.K. Rowling. And that's a very early signature of hers. I would say late 97, maybe early 98. So the signature alone is quite hard to come by because she wasn't who she is now as far as like being well known. There weren't a lot of people at the signing events and stuff. So yeah, I love that. And I actually got this signature. It was either the second or third signature that I got out of all of my signed books. I either bought it right after I got, or not right after, but maybe a few months after I got the Haley signature that was bought through Peter, or somewhere around there. But I got this book very early on. I want to say off of abebooks.com. And I've hung on to that ever since. I've loved that signature. And then what's really fun is I have a Deathly Hallows Bloomsbury, and it's signed, dedicated to Jessica. So really fun. It has, you know, the hologram and all of that. It doesn't have the fun inscription with it, but I love that it's dedicated to Jessica. It would be really cool if they were, you know, the same, but probably not. But I like kind of bookending my signed Harry Potter books with the Jessicas. I think that's neat. Also, how much her signature has changed from 1997, early 98 to 2007 when the Deathly Hallows was signed. It's wild how different it's changed. I'll show you the 2007 again just so you can see. Yeah, but the Jessica looks similar. I love that. So yeah, I would have to say the Jessicas, I just go back to them. I also have some other really fun dedicated books as well, but I love bookending my signed Harry Potter books with the Jessicas, I guess. If I'm going to discuss favorite cover art, I know I've said, you know, the Lithuanian 20th anniversary books, the Asturian Harry Potter translation, and all of these are found on my website, alltheprettybooks.com, on the associated pages. But yeah, I couldn't really pick because I love so many of the different cover art from around the world for different reasons. So I think choosing a favorite cover is really hard. So I'm not going to do that right now because I like so many of them, you know. All right, I hope I've answered some of your questions. I apologize for some of the answers being a little bit, you know, long story long kind of deal, but I haven't really sat and answered them in depth for people, I guess, on a video. I've thought about it for a while, but I really don't know that I have, and if I have, it's been a few years. So I hope you enjoyed. If you have other Harry Potter questions, don't hesitate to ask. If you have questions about signed Harry Potter books, I'm going to send you over to Adam, who has a great eye. He authenticates only J.K. Rowling signatures, and I'll put his contact details down below as well. If you want other Harry Potter content, I also co-host a wonderful podcast called Dialogue Alley, and we are the official podcast of The Potter Collector. And we have so much fun. We all collect similar things, but do it very differently, and we spend a lot of the episodes discussing how, what, and why we do things differently and our opinions on different things. And we just have a lot of fun, so you should check it out. We're available on Apple, Google, or wherever you get your podcasts, and I'll put our links down below for that as well. And with that, I'm going to say y'all are great. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay magical, happy collecting, and good night.